So, San Francisco being what it is, I just had dinner potluck at a house that I knew almost nobody at, and I met some very interesting people who were working on some interesting stuff, and I had a conversation, and it has me reflecting on something about my relationship to my business. So, one of the guys that I was talking with two people. One of them was a young entrepreneur, and the other was a fellow in his late 50s who's been around a while and seen a bunch of different stuff, been looking at the AI scene since the 80s. And the young entrepreneur is working on building some technology to do better conversational AI, basically, for starting with like customer support type stuff. And to sort of maybe both replace chatbots and human support techs. And there's a lot of concerns I have about various ways that could be implemented, and I have in general been quite skeptical of a lot of chatbot type technology because it's often kind of degrading, to be entirely honest. But obviously, if it can be sufficiently good, then it can be good. And that's about the experience the person has. And basically, this guy wants to build perspective taking into the AI, which is a bit of a puzzle, but of course, because the AI, can't actually say, yeah, I totally know how you feel, because let's face it, the AI is an AI. But it could maybe do various things. It could say, I'm a robot, so I don't know how you feel, but I can totally imagine that if you were, but I can totally imagine, that's not quite right either. But you could just say, it sounds like you're really frustrated, and that must be difficult or something, right? So it's not pretending that it knows on an emotional, visceral level what it's like to be you, but it's making space for the reality that you do in fact feel like you do. And so, yeah, lots of interesting stuff here. This video is going to be a little bit vlog-like, kind of all over the place. Because what I just said relates a lot to my work with perspective taking, and self-validation and so forth. There's a way in which, in some sense, AI anywhere near the level that we have this decade is not really going to be taking your perspective, not in the way that humans do. But it could have a dialogue with you that helps you take your own perspective. And in fact, the early 70 line of code Eliza chatbot that basically just echoes back to people literally what they said and says, tell me more. And like, what's going on with word that you used, right? It just picks up on keywords and says stuff. So, that AI even helped people feel heard and understood, because basically they got to express themselves and not get interrupted or taken off on a tangent or corrected or rebutted. Just the mere fact that the AI was sort of letting them talk was itself actually quite validating for them. And so I think there's space to obviously do way better with stuff like that, and to basically guide people in their own process to really affirm their own thinking. So the AI can't hear you truly, but it can help you hear yourself, which I've noted in a couple other videos is sort of step one for you to thoroughly hear someone else. So it could be an interesting thing to have in the context of a disagreement or something. It could help moderate conflicts. That's a very interesting concept. I'll have to think more about that. Anyway, so that's thing one. The other thing it got me thinking about, though, was like, how would I deploy this software in relation to my app, Accomplice? And there's sort of two dimensions there as well, which is like, so Accomplice is a piece of software that helps people be more intentional. And I've sometimes likened it to, I sometimes described it as a semi-automated life coach, which, it's not really that much like a life coach. It's a piece of software that does not purport to have any particular, human-like interface to it. But it does fill some of the role of a life coach in terms of like checking in with you in a sense, periodically in a pretty open-ended way. So not just like, did you check the box, but like, how was it to check the box or not? And you know, where are you at with that? So one thing, you know, of course, is I could like do more coaching type stuff with this software. But then the other thing, of course, would be using the chat software to just to like handle the customer support stuff, right? Which, you know, any business could do. And what intrigued me about the whole thing is that I've already felt like my software, Complas, is kind of an extension of my own personality. Like I have a tendency to, you know, if I talk to somebody about their goals or whatever, I have a tendency to be very supportive. I, you know, help them clarify their goals and, you know, and help them figure out what they want to do towards those goals. And then I might check in with them in a week or a month and how's things going towards that. You know, I had a friend who, you know, said he wanted to do something meaningful with his life, but first he wanted to, you know, go work for a big tech company. I don't know, save up some money, learn some stuff. And I sent him a message 5 years later, as he indicated, that was about how long he wanted to do that. And I was like, hey, what are you doing now? And I just actually ran into him a few months ago, and he's started his own company doing something really cool now. So anyway, I'm very rambly right now, and that's fine. So I've been thinking about, you know, Complas as itself being a piece of software that actually helps me scale my nurturing impulse, like my desire to nurture people and their goals and so forth. Complas enables me to do that for more people than I can do if I, the organism of Malcolm Ocean, have to be in the loop of people, of doing that for people. It's like instead, someone can wake up in the morning and they can say to Complas, which is, you know, this instantiation of Malcolm's beingness in the world, they can say to Complas, hey, here's what I'm doing today. And Complas is checking out throughout the whole day with them, even if I'm totally offline and even if I have never met them and know nothing about them and so forth. They can still have the experience of being in touch with that way of thinking that I have imbued into the application. And so I basically think that people could, it seems to me that this chat software could, maybe in part by being trained on my actual conversations with people in whatever way. And I mean, I don't know what that would all entail. And I'm very, very concerned about ways in which, you know, it's like, okay, it could be trained on my conversations, but then I don't want it to talk like me. Like, I don't want it to pretend to be Malcolm, right? Like, that would be weird. But maybe that could be trained out of it. I don't know. Maybe there'll be parameters for that. And so but it could function as yet a further extension of my personality and my, not exactly my will, but my way of thinking, my way of perceiving the world. It could sort of bring that into into more people's lives in an even more vivid way. And I feel really excited about that. And yeah. And then there's a sense in which, you know, each person is sitting with different kinds of wisdom about the world and so forth. And software like this could help many people's wisdom be scaled up. And I think, you know, there's got to be a certain translation layer. Oh yeah, the entrepreneur who was working on this thing talked about it basically scaling the intention of the entrepreneur. And that seems basically about right, which is interesting too. Like, Complas is very much about intentions. And yeah, so it's like the intentionality of the entrepreneur, of the whoever, the creator that would be creating some entity that one could converse with, which again is first going to be just solving customer support issues. But yeah, it seems that there's some possibility for different people's ways of thinking to get scaled up. You're not going to scale up the relevance realization process itself. I mean, at that point you've got AGI. And at that point, also the AI is doing something very different than simply responding to chat messages. It's orienting to the world in a sense. But you could scale up the the sense of
where are your friends?
hang on, I'm going to pause while I walk past this stuff. But you might be able to scale up enough of the texture of the way of thinking that when the person comes in contact with this upscaled thing, they can themselves access the gem of some of that element of relevance realization for themselves. I've just thrown in this term relevance realization. It comes from John Vervaeke, and it's really cool. It's this idea of consciousness and cognition, as far as I can tell, are evolutionary in nature, and where you have fitness in a reproductive sense for biological evolution, you have something like relevance for cognitive evolution, but there is no static what is relevant. There is an ongoing process of relevance realization, which is to say finding that which is relevant at the edges of what you're currently able to perceive. Anyway, he's got a whole paper on this. And it seems to me that something like each person does this relevance realization in an utterly unique way. And that is something at the essence of what a personality even is, beyond something like somebody's ego or their persona or their identity. It's like the way of making sense of everything that they have. Anyway, so that might be one of the things that, as I said, it's not that gets scaled up, because that's not what the AI would be doing, but that the wisdom of it might be able to be transmitted. I mean, I am right now in this moment to you, the listener, the watcher of this video, conveying something of my beingness to you. If you pay attention to how it is that I'm paying attention, how I seem to be paying attention to the world, you will perhaps notice things that you wouldn't notice otherwise. And that's just that's not even so much noticing what I pay attention to. There's this book, I forget what it's called, where somebody walks around the same block with 6 very different people with different expertises and comments on what they comment on. And sure, it's what they comment on, but it's also the pattern of paying attention that they're bringing to that whole process. And so even if you even if you have people in a conversation and there's much the same things going on, they're going to be asking different questions about what that conversation even is. Anyway, that is probably enough rambling for now. It's good to be alive. Good conversations are fucking good. I like having them.